Good afternoon, welcome to Channel 44. I am Masi Gashegu Sembatia to bring you this afternoon's business news together with Livingstone Kawesi for sign language interpretation and translation. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa was forced this week to cancel a trip to Davos by an escalating energy crisis that is inflicting road blackouts on the continent's most developed economy. Ramaphosa swapped his trip to the World Economic Forum in Switzerland for emergency meetings on the ongoing energy crisis, according to his spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, who posted on Twitter on Monday. South Africans have endured power cuts for years, but 2022 was the worst on record, with 205 days of rolling blackouts as aging coal-fired power plants broke down and state-owned power utility Eskom struggled to find the money to buy diesel for emergency generators. So far this year, there have been outages every day, and the situation worsened again last week when Eskom said it would implement more cuts because of breakdowns at 11 coal-fired generating units. Load shedding, as it is known locally, was escalating to level 6, which entails removing 6,000 megawatts worth of power from the grid in order to rebalance demand and supply. This can result in outages lasting 4 to 5 hours at a time and totaling 12 hours a day for households and businesses. At peak times, demand in South Africa averages between 28,000 megawatts and 34,000 megawatts. The UN Secretary General has accused fossil fuel producers and their financial backers of racing to expand production, knowing full well that their business model is inconsistent with human survival. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos today, Antonio Guterres said the commitment to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels is going up in smoke. He said they are flirting with climate disaster, and every week brings a new climate horror story. Guterres pointed blame squarely at fossil fuel industry when addressing the Davos crowds composed of billionaires, business leaders, politicians, and dozens of high-level executives from the world's biggest oil and gas companies. He said they learned last week that certain fossil fuel producers were fully aware in the 1970s that their core product was baking the planet, alluding to an analysis that showed ExxonMobil's own scientists accurately predicted further global warming in reports dating back decades, despite the company publicly continuing for years to cast doubt on climate science and lobby against climate action. And in the New York, Microsoft could announce thousands of job cuts today, according to multiple news reports, potentially becoming the latest tech company to cull its workforce as the global economy slows. Sky News, without naming sources, reported the layoffs would affect roughly 5% of the company's workforce. Microsoft employs 221,000 people around the world, including 122,000 in the United States alone. The software company plans to cut jobs in a number of engineering divisions, according to Bloomberg, which cited a person familiar with the matter. The Wall Street Journal, also citing a person familiar with the matter, said layoffs could be announced as soon as today, and Microsoft denied to comment on the reports. Multiple tech companies have made deep cuts to their workforces since the start of the year, as inflation weighs on consumer spending and rising interest rates squeezing funding. The demand for digital services during the pandemic has also waned as people return to their offline lives. Amazon announced that it plans to lay off 18,000 people, and Salesforce said it's cutting 10% of its staff. Still in business, Netflix is hiring a flight attendant for one of its private jets, with the successful applicant being paid as much as $385,000 a year. The streaming giant says it's looking for candidates with independent judgment, discretion, and outstanding customer service skills. They should also be able to operate with little direction and a lot of self-motivation. Last year, Netflix cut hundreds of jobs after a fall in subscriber numbers. The overall market range for this role is typically $60,000 to $385,000, and the market range is based on total compensation versus only base salary, which is in line with their compensation philosophy, according to a job listing on its website. The company also said it determines an employee's salary by considering compensation factors such as their background, experience, and skills. The role, based in San Jose, California, requires travel in and beyond the United States. The advert that the team helps Netflix reach the world more effectively and efficiently, so the company can continue to create joy around the world. In the United Kingdom, price rises in the UK slowed for a second month in a row, but the cost of food, including milk, cheese, and eggs, kept inflation at a 40-year high. Inflation, which measures the rate of prices, fell to 10.5% in the year to December from 10.7% in November. Petrol and diesel eased last month, but food prices continue to soar, reaching the highest since 1977. Restaurants and hotel prices also jumped in December, along with record rise in airfares. Millions of people are struggling with the cost of living, which has been rising steadily as COVID restrictions eased and Russia launched its assault on Ukraine. Food prices rose 16.8% in the year to December, and many households splashed out for Christmas, according to the Office of National Statistics. Basics such as milk, cheese, and eggs saw the largest increases, and price for sugar, jam, and honey and chocolate, as well as soft drinks and juices, also jumped. However, price growth slowed for bread and cereal. Food wholesale Philip Didetenato, who runs Creed Food Service in Cheltenham, said that last year had seen a tsunami of food prices. And moving on, collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX says that around $415 million of crypto has been stolen by hackers. About $323 million was hacked from its international exchange and $90 million from its US platform since the firm filed for bankruptcy. FTX co-founder Sam Bankman-Fried has been accused of stealing billions of dollars from FTX users to pay debts at his other firm, Alameda Research. Mr. Bankman-Fried has pleaded not guilty to fraud charges. Last week, the company told a bankruptcy judge in Delaware that it had recovered more than $5 billion in assets. On Tuesday, which was yesterday, FTX provided further details, saying that it had recovered $1.7 billion in cash, $3.5 billion in so-called liquid cryptocurrency, and $300 million in liquid securities. In finance, the term liquid means that an asset can be easily converted into cash without affecting its value. The firm also said that it had identified significant shortfalls at both its international and US exchanges. However, it did not give an estimate of total liabilities. Well, we'll now take a very short break, a look at today's financial highlights. Stay tuned to Channel 44. You'll get to know how the dollar is performing against major world currencies and know how to buy and sell in which forex bureau. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I will now continue with our international business news highlights. The head of the UN's Agency for Workers' Rights has denied that the organization backs the UK's tough strike laws. It comes after UK ministers repeatedly suggested the International Labour Organization ILO supported government plans to enforce minimum service levels during public sector strikes. The new laws are meant to protect the public from the impact of walkouts. The unions have called them undemocratic, unworkable, and illegal. The U.S. Labor Secretary Matthew Walsh told the press that he disagrees with the idea of minimum service agreements for public sector workers and suggested they may be detrimental to workers. The UK strike bill will give the government the power to unilaterally assert levels of service provision from striking workers in certain sectors and could lead to workers losing their jobs or unions being sued. It follows a wave of industrial action by frontline public sector workers such as ambulance staff, firefighters and railway workers, which the government says puts the public at risk. UK ministers, including the Prime Minister, have repeatedly said that the ILO supports these minimum service agreements around the world. When asked about this at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Gilbert Hongbo, the ILO's Director General, said that while the organization did not want to interfere in national discussions, a social dialogue between employers and employees was especially important during the current economic downturn. Mr. Hongbo added that he was very worried about workers having to accept situations due to being faced with the threat of losing their jobs. Moving on, Europe is scrambling to buy diesel from Russia before a ban on imports comes into force in early February, but the frantic stockpiling is unlikely to prevent a new price shock for truckers, drivers, and businesses. In the first 2 weeks of January, European countries snapped up almost 8 million barrels of Russian diesel, according to energy data provider Vortexa, roughly on par with imports this time last year before Russia invaded Ukraine. Imports in the fourth quarter of 2022 were up nearly 19% on the same period of the previous year. Since Russia's invasion in February last year, the European Union has made a huge effort to wean itself off Moscow's oil and natural gas supplies. That has included a ban on oil, on all Russian seaborne crude oil imports, which came into force in December. European Union countries drastically reduced their imports of crude from Russia ahead of the ban, but that isn't happening with diesel because it is much harder to find alternative sources of the fuel. Russia is the bloc's biggest supplier, making up to 29% of its total diesel imports last year, according to data from Rystad Energy Show. The fuel is the continent's economic workhorse, according to Mark Williams. And moving on, in Asia, the yen plunged today after the Bank of Japan decided to maintain its ultra-easy monetary policy, defying market expectation that rising inflation could force the central bank to move away from low interest rates. The BOJ, which is the Bank of Japan, kept its yield curve control, YCC targets unchanged as it concluded a two-day policy meeting this morning, and it left the short-term interest rate at an ultra-dovish minus 0.1%, and the 10-year Japanese government bonds yield around 0%. The YCC policy is a pillar of the central bank's effort to keep interest rates low and stimulate the economy. The surprise decision sent the yen tumbling, and it briefly dropped 2.7% against the US dollar around noon. It later paired some losses, last trading 1.3% lower at 129.76 yen per dollar, and last Friday the currency hit a 7-month high of 127.46 against the greenback. Japan's economy, despite being affected by factors such as high commodity prices, has picked up as the resumption of economic activity has progressed, while public health has been protected from COVID-19, according to the central bank in its quarterly outlook report, adding that slowdowns in overseas economies could put downward pressure on growth. Moving on, a cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase Global Incorporated today said it will halt operations in Japan due to volatile market conditions. All Coinbase Japan customers will have until February the 16th to withdraw their fiat and crypto holdings, according to the company, which released a blog post. Coinbase's decision to exit comes only a few weeks after rival exchange Kraken said it too would ease operations in Japan this month. Several firms have suffered from waning investor appetite for crypto after major exchange FTX blew up in September. Higher interest rates and worries of an economic downturn have also piled pressure on the crypto industry as investors flee risky assets. The crypto sector woes have continued this year, marked by plunging deposits, layoffs, and multiple legal hurdles. Coinbase, Crypto.com, and Huobi have all announced plans to lay off about 20% of their respective staff, while a source told the press earlier this month that Genesis too had cut jobs equating to 30% of its workforce. Well, we'll take a very short break, and this is for motorists. If you are a motorist, you have your own car, we bring you the different prices of fuel around the city and around the country. Stay tuned to Channel 44 and know where you can buy fuel at how much. Welcome back as we continue in today's international business news. In Asia, China's population shrank in 2022 for the first time in more than 60 years, a new milestone in the country's deepening demographic crisis with significant implications for its slowing economy. The population fell in 2022 to 1.411 billion, down some 850,000 people from the previous year, according to China's National Bureau of Statistics in an announcement during a press briefing on annual data yesterday. Analysts said the decline was the first since 1961, during the Great Famine triggered by former leader Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward. The birth rate also fell to a record low of 6.77 births per 1,000 people, down from 7 a year earlier and lowest level since the founding of a communist China in 1949. Some 9 million babies were born compared to 10 million in 2021, despite a push from the government to encourage more married couples to have children. The new data came alongside the announcement of one of China's worst annual economic performances in nearly half a century, with the economy expanding by just 3% for the year, far below the government's target, underscoring the steep economic challenges the country faces as its labor force shrinks and its retired demographic grows. Well, that brings us to the end of this afternoon's business news segment. Stay tuned to Channel 44. The Big Tunes program is up next, and later on We'll have the midweek service. There will be great praise and worship. There will be a lot happening in the service. Dream interpretation, word of knowledge. If you can, please come to the Miracle Center Cathedral. You will be blessed. Pastor Robert Kayanja will be ministering, and we are always blessed by what happens in the midweek service. Bring the sick, bring the lame, bring all those that need the hand of God upon their lives. The presence of God is always here to deliver and to save all those that are in need. I also remind you that we are still helping the people of Karamoja. Join us as we put a smile on their faces this season, as our pastor continues to lead us as he is led by the Holy Spirit. God bless you and enjoy your evening.